Hi there. Gonna go with something a little bit different. I've written something to try and keep me a little bit on track. So if I look weird or my eyes are darting, it's because I'm reading something. So just wanted to give it a go. So I saw a post from someone from TikTok, stroke Instagram. They mainly post on TikTok, called Catiosaurus. Um, and I thought I'd put a little bit of my own spin, kind of my experiences with learning difficulties, slow cognitive processing, autism, and such. Maybe it can help you, it could help others, make you understand things a little bit more, maybe answer some questions you have about yourself or whoever. Now, I'm not sure if it's just an ADHD thing. Catiosaurus does have ADHD, does have other problems, I believe, depression and such, but also is kinky, so it's kind of funny. Their videos on kink are so funny, well worth watching. Anyway, but their post recently really struck a chord, and I wanted to say something. So she would really like this description of how I'm going to put this across. It's about memory. It's about sort of this difficulties those with ADHD, mental health problems, and such face when it comes to things like memories. So they're also a D&D player, Dungeons and Dragons player. So I thought instantly it came to mind how memory and such can be like spell slots in the game. So if you're not familiar, I'll go over it a bit. So when you start with a new character, you have a limited amount of spell slots depending on spell slots and abilities depending on your level in the game. Level 1 may have like 1 or 2, 3 you go up a couple, 5 you go up, 7 I think you go up in kind of every second or third level you get a new either you get a new ability or a new spell slot or a couple of spell slots, and these things rank up, and by the time you get to 20 you have an absolute shed load, and it's really good, and you can do loads of cool things, super cool things, and you can do them repeatedly. But at lower levels you can only do certain amounts. Now when it comes to lower levels with abilities and spell slots, depending on the type of character you have, you only have you only have certain amounts, but sometimes they also tie into, so you can only do this amount of spells or this amount of abilities per round, per game, per what's called a short rest, which is in-game 4 hours, or a long rest, which is 8 hours stroke sleep. So yeah, as you can tell, I've already gone off script because I've gone over a little bit. So let me just try and find my spot again. Okay. Now, coming back to sort of the real world, far too often people like myself have smaller spaces for things like memories. And facts about, or things you need to know for work, facts about yourself, facts about others, things you need to remember for daily things, like remembering to wash up or do washing or put something away or remember where you put something to keep it safe, and then can end up forgetting 15 minutes later. I recently went to Manchester to visit some friends. Obviously, we were out and about, and I was constantly forgetting that I actually just had pulled my mask down as opposed to taking it off. So I'm like, where is it? Where is it? It's round your neck. I do that with sunglasses. I've done that forever, and I think that it's just one of those things that those with sort of mental health issues and such forget. So just going back on to trying to go back on course. So we only have a limited amount of spaces for things like somebody else's favourite things, whether it be food, music, birthdays. So when someone with these issues takes or does what they can to remember favourite things for others. Say, let's just say a neurotypical and a neurodivergent person. Neurodivergent person's me, and somebody else. I will do whatever I can to try and remember those things for that person. Say, if someone's favourite band, or favourite artist, favourite TV show, favourite food, any of these things. Often, for myself at least, it feels like I will end up pushing something else out of my memory, not willingly, but pushing it out of my own memory to make space for somebody else. Which isn't bad. It's not a bad thing, not angry or sad about it, but it does mean that when somebody else doesn't, the other person, the neurotypical person, doesn't show that kind of care isn't the right word, but exercises that memory that you've given them, it can be really disheartening and upsetting. But got to remember, just as Katie Soros said, it's not a reflection on them really. They've just done a human thing like you do, which is forget. And sometimes they may not realise how detrimental it is, and that they don't remember that thing about you, especially because you've done it for them. And it's really hard for people to understand that, whether they be neurotypical or neurodivergent. Again, gone off target. And yes, so for an example, my dad, his excuse for never being able to remember anything is usually one of two reasons. I've been asleep since then, which is funny in itself, or they've learnt new things, which means that your brain has pushed out old things, which is a bit silly, but I don't know if it's that different, because I can really identify with that idea. There are things in jobs that, or there's even jobs. There's tasks in jobs that I've had previously that, although when I was there, I was eventually able to do eyes closed, backwards, whatever you want to call it. But if you sat me in front of it now, I wouldn't be able to tell you the process. I might be able to eventually remember it, but it would take a while. And there are other things that I would just flat out forget because it's no longer there. And I feel like, yes, that could be normal human reactions, but I also think that it plays into the memory aspect where it's not immediately available, and that in itself can actually be really stressful and frustrating for neurodivergent people. Trust me, like, it is infuriating. And often at times, just to bring another analogy, it can feel like a 1,000 gig / 1 terabyte hard drive, and that's my brain, and I'm running on under a gig left. So I'm constantly trying to defragment and delete and organise, and always at the precipice of running out of room, running out of power. Because often after a day of learning, or an intense day where I have to recall things, or trying to get help to recall things, or learning, it can be incredibly stressful and it wipes me out. Like, there have been times at several different jobs, this one at the moment, because I do work from home most of the time, I can I'm sitting in what is my work chair now, and you can see the bed behind me. There have been times where I've literally just stood up from the chair, fallen onto the bed, watched something on TV for half an hour, and then slept for anywhere between half an hour to 2.5 hours. And that's what it's like sometimes. Body and mind are not working together, and running out of room in my mind to process anything anymore, really. It is like a complete shutdown, and trying to work with that kind of mind and memory just doesn't work sometimes. Just shuts down, stops. I've had times where my brain I've just been laying there and I thought I've been alright after work, and then all of a sudden I'm going to actually lay down and put my head down, and I'm out within seconds. And I don't wake anywhere between half an hour and 2.5 hours, as I said. Yeah, so it can feel very clogged up in there, like there's not enough room for information. And yeah, it can put stress on yourself, on others, and can inadvertently create ill feeling. Like there are times where I've spoken to my flatmate or family or someone, and I've told them once or twice, maybe a couple of times, or in some people's case, multiple times, but they never remember like what shifts I'm on or when I'm available. And I get really annoyed and frustrated with it. And I'm like, well, once I'm out of that little bit of headspace, I'm like, what do you remember about them when they said they were working? Or can you remember XYZ? Do you have a leg to stand on when you're talking about memory? And often I don't. Frustratingly, I can do really weird things with my memory. And for example, a couple of years ago we had a reunion of a club night called Rocket in London. And for a couple of months beforehand, we had a Facebook group where we were all talking about the old times, sharing photos, all that kind of things. And I started losing count the amount of times there were stories posted or photos posted by other people. And a few friends would literally, not that I wouldn't see it anyway, but I had quite a few people tagging me in them specifically, going, so who was there that night? Who remembers this fight or when this famous person turned up at the club? And in all honesty, the majority of the time I was like, yeah, it was that month, it was that year, this person was DJing, sometimes even the song that was on when something kicked off. And it's just the weird way my brain works. I'll just remember those things. I have absolutely no idea why these are burnt into my mind. It's just a very strange one. And yeah, so I'm just going to try and go back on script a little bit here as well. Yeah, like obviously some of this can be helped, like can be, doesn't necessarily mean it will, and it won't work for everyone. Things like being active, changing up your environment, going out, getting some air, eating well, sleeping well, dietary things. None are cure-all fixes, and they definitely won't work for everyone. Some things will help, some won't. Sometimes medication is just the way to go, but getting the right medication and then having it treated for the right thing is also another battle, unfortunately. When learning new things, I find it incredibly hard, frustratingly. When I was at school, I think I only did well because after school I used to sit down with my dad and do homework and be taken through things and shown things and explained a little bit more. But when both my parents either left jobs or were laid off, they went back to university and college, college and university, then getting all their qualifications. But unfortunately, with a slightly fraught home life, my grandmother that we live with was very combative to my mother. It caused lots of tension, and people split about the house, and I wasn't able to get the help that I needed at school, so my schoolwork suffered. Little did we know that we've got learning difficulties in the family. I've got autism, and slow cognitive processing and other things as well. It wasn't anyone's fault, no one knew, but I do put a little blame on teachers for not recognising. My school report every year, in the UK we've got this thing called Parents' Evening, where parents just go and find teachers for certain subjects for their children and talk to them about how they're doing and all that kind of stuff. And my report, I refused to go after a while. After a few years, kids are always usually can be dragged to those things. Just no idea. It's actually quite humiliating. But I started up full on just refusing to go, because it was the same bloody thing every single time. Andrew's a good student. He just needs to concentrate more and needs to do better and just practice and all that crap. So, okay, no, I've got some real problems. Long story short, when I was diagnosed with strong autistic traits, spent the first minute or two crying, and then I physically, literally just went to every teacher I ever had and just went, fuck you for not picking up. It's your job to realise this. Yet no one did. It took me till I was 33 before anyone really bothered. But yeah, it's not easy being a neurodivergent person, and not every neurotypical or even other neurodivergent people will understand the stress of bad memory and wanting to do better but not always able to, because some of these things can't be helped. They can't be magicked away. Good diet, sleep, medication, good relationships, good working environment, outside stress is reduced. These things can help, but they're not a magic cure-all. They're not gonna stop everything. None of it ever will. Neurodivergent people will always have to manage these things. I was going to say suffer, but manage is more of a positive word to use, I would think. Yeah, and I think for both neurodivergent and typical people, we all need to remember that things aren't maliciously always forgotten. Sometimes it's just human error. Didn't realise that needed to be remembered, and people like myself need to remember that not others don't hyperfixate and burn certain things into memories. I met up with someone recently who I hadn't seen in over a year or so, and I'm reeling off information I remember about them, and they didn't remember some things I thought they might. Wasn't actually upset or pissed off, which is good, but I'm there was definitely a part of me of I definitely remember these things, and why don't you? But we're not the same. We'll never be the same people. Two people will never ever be the same, and it shouldn't be seen as a terribly bad thing. Yeah, I mean, you should remember people's birthdays, and maybe special events, but sometimes you've got to remember that other people have their own lives, have their own things going on, Um, yeah, I'm not always able to. I'm not going to lie though, it is a pain. It can be very stressful. It's also, I get stressed for myself because I can remember something that happened at a club in bloody 1997, or a club night, or who was where and where we were sitting and all those kind of informations, but I can't remember like my bank account number or really important things. Like it causes unnecessarily undue stress when you want to be that person that can just provide that information like that, but unfortunately it just doesn't work like that. I think also like my own insecurities don't help. Like I will need someone to sit down with me, show me how to do something, let me practice it, and then have the person over my shoulder like watch me do the thing. Like, okay, is this right? Okay, that's the next stage. Is that right? That's the next stage. Is that right? And I need that reassurance, but I also need to practice it over and over and over and over again. Like I will need to do something 10, 15, 20 times before I'll remember and be able to do it autonomously, which is stressful in life and in work. And not all workplaces understand that. I may look like I've got my shit together and can do certain things, but it's only because I've learnt to. The age-old, oh, you don't look like you've got autism, or you don't look or sound like you've got X, Y, Z, not Z. But that's because I'm literally 41. I was 41 the other day. In school-wise, I've had 30-odd years, let's just say, 30-odd years of masking myself, pretending not to be different. Of course I've fooled you. There are other people in the world that have spent the same amount of time, less amount of time, but you would never know. Like Anthony Hopkins a few years ago came forward as finding out that he had autism, and then there are other people, other actors, actresses, celebs and stuff. So, oh, I've got this mental health condition. Oh, I've got this health condition, and all sorts. And they're like, oh, would never have known. No, because they're good at it. They're good at hiding it. And generally that comment, oh, I would never have guessed, or are you? Wow, okay, makes neurodivergent and those suffering diseases or issues, kind of invalidates them a bit. You don't mean to, but it does make them feel shit, because it's like, yeah, I'm not out here waving a flag saying I have this, so that was what I was doing, whether it was intentional or not. Like, duh. Not having a dig, because, as I said, it's sometimes a neurotypical way of trying to identify and say it's not outwardly obvious, so there's surprise, but in that you're kind of making them feel worse, without intention anyway. But yeah, I mean, I'll leave it there. I've been talking quite a bit. Welcome any questions. I might post this elsewhere so people can maybe understand a bit, learn a bit, because we could all do with trying to understand ourselves and each other a little bit better. But let me know what you think. If you've got any questions or whatever, send them over. I'm all over the shop. All my socials are connected to YouTube, I think. But yeah, don't be a stranger. Thanks for listening.